Hey Cradle fans, welcome to the new video. This is going to be about Dreadgods. It's going to be about Sacred Valley. It's going to be how Will White does an amazing job in book 1 of teasing you by not giving you information in the right order so that on your first read through you miss everything. And on your second read through you start to piece things together. But I'm going to try and point out how the Dreadgods are so intertwined with Sacred Valley and point out a couple interesting things regarding the geography of Sacred Valley, how it kind of comes, there's a lot of parallels with the Dreadgods. I'm not really going to extrapolate too much. I'm not going to make any weird guesses as to what that could mean. Just a cool video going back through Unsouled and talking about the Dreadgods. Now, because I'm going back through Unsouled, there's no spoiler warning. But if you haven't read Unsouled, or if you're not, I don't know. If you haven't read the book, I don't know why you're on this video. But if you haven't read it, there's a link in the description. Go buy it. Okay, so this video, I'm not going to ramble for 30 minutes with just my face. I've got some visuals, which I'm going to share here in a second. And I'm basically going to be pulling quotes directly from the book. No word of Will in this video. So let's get going. Okay, so here, let's go. The first place we see Sacred Valley having a history, having a past that's mysterious, is after Lindon goes and talks with Elder Whisper. He comes, Elder Whisper sees him, he leaves. Elder Whisper, being a many thousands of year old dream artist, sees that Lindon is tied with fate. So he starts talking to himself, pondering about the history of Sacred Valley and the future of Sacred Valley and Sacred Valley's fate. So I find it interesting that this quote talks about Sacred Valley's past on page 37, before we've ever had Dreadgods mentioned, before anybody's mentioned the beasts or what the past is. So for a first-time reader, reading through that doesn't mean anything. Ooh, cool, we'll find out later. So then we progress some pages, and we get to Lee Markuth's arrival. Now there's some cool stuff related to spatial, matter manipulating space, but I won't get into that. But this is the first time we see mentioned what that could be. So I'm bolded here, where Lee Markuth comes through the portal. The first thing he says is, I haven't been here in a bit. Have the 4 beasts come home? And the elders don't know what he's talking about. He laughs at them. No need to answer. You still live, so they remain abroad. Okay, so there's 4 beasts that Sacred Valley's their home. Had they returned, everyone would be dead, but they're abroad right now. Okay, cool. We still don't know what those are because the word Dreadgod has not yet been said. Okay, cool. Nothing groundbreaking here. But right now in the book, we're so focused on Lee Markuth, and holy shit, who's this guy? That we're not focused on the Dreadgods, and we have no idea that they're going to be a major part of the story. So then we move on. Now we're at the first point in which Dreadgods are mentioned. So we have Suriel's report on page 129. This is, I don't know, 15 pages after we see Lee Markuth come through the portal, and we see Suriel look at Lindon's future. And at the very end of Lindon's future, he dies in a Dreadgod attack that claims a quarter of the valley. Okay, so now we know Dreadgods are going to ruin the valley, kill Lindon, and according to Lee Markuth, 15 pages before, there's 4 of them. Now, we still don't extrapolate all this together because a Dreadgod attack doesn't associate with 4 beasts yet. So let's move on. Okay, now I'm going to focus on Dreadgod descriptions because we get these later on in the book and they give a lot of information. Alright, so next slide. This is really the only description of the 4 Dreadgods we get in this book, but I'm going to pull from 2 more books because they have slightly tweaked descriptions. But in book 1, on page, like these pages, it's at the very end. inside the ancestor's tomb, they see a mural on the ceiling with 4 beasts. 4 beasts, key here. A blue serpentine dragon on a thunderstorm. And I want you to pay attention to how these are described. So we have a blue serpentine dragon on a thunderstorm, a crowned white tiger, and then these two don't really matter, a stone warrior with the shell of a tortoise, and a blazing red phoenix. Okay? Nice. What's the next description? We've got a serpentine dragon on a cloud flashing with lightning, a crowned tiger again, a stone warrior with the shell of a tortoise, and a blazing phoenix. Okay, so this is actually in book 2. So this is in Soulsmith. And then the last one, which is has more information, but I'm pulling it in because it's going to kind of prove a point for me later. That here's the description. And there's only 2 of them that really matter. So 4 beasts were etched on the top. A coiling dragon surrounded by rain and crackling with lightning. Surrounded by rain and crackling with lightning. On the bottom, a phoenix with feathers like drops of blood. Who cares? And then to the right, an armored warrior with the shell of a turtle and a sword so rough it was almost a club. Kind of interesting. And then here's the really the important one. To the left, a tiger seated on treasure and crowned with light. Okay, that's important. These are several books later, these last 2. And then this first one, where we see a crowned white tiger and a blue serpentine dragon on a thunderstorm. This is in book 1. Okay, now remember how those are described, because now I'm going to go back into book 1 earlier on, where Suriel is pulling out a report of the geography of Sacred Valley. Okay, I'm going to go through each of the peaks, but again, I have certain things bolded. And if at any point you want to read all this and I go through too fast, just pause it. Just pause it. Okay, so I think this is the, let me check real quick. This is one of the second, I think it's the second time that a Dreadgod is mentioned. It is the second time a Dreadgod is mentioned, and it is on page 153, so 30 some odd pages after the first time. And this is when Suriel has pulled a report of all of Sacred Valley. I didn't pull the whole thing, but you can go back to your copy and read it. It's around page 150, 153. Okay, so the first mountain, Yoma Mountain. Not too much going on here, except Yoma Mountain possesses the largest and most obvious entrance to the labyrinth that forms the foundation of the entire Sacred Valley, an entrance known as the Nether Gate. Okay, the door stands 30 meters high and is carved with the image of a Dreadgod. Important. So we know that now there are more than one entrance to this labyrinth that forms the foundation of the entire valley. At this point, we don't know the significance of the labyrinth. And now we know that the entrance is called the Nether Gate. Nether Gate, not too important. Not yet, anyway. Not in this book. The door stands 30 meters high and is carved with the image of a Dreadgod. Now, I have asked Will which Dreadgod, and he said it's too spoilery. Come again in a few books. He didn't say that, but he said too spoilery. So we can't know what Dreadgod is on the Nether Gate, and so we don't know if there's a Dreadgod Mountain association. But moving on, the Greatfather Mountain is the second one. The mountain called Greatfather, it's broken. Its peaks are shattered. Whatever. Water pools up there, cascading down the cliffs in a stream known as the Dragon River. Fueled by the water aura at the top of the mountain, storms rack these slopes year-round. The Holy Wind School maintains shelters for unlucky travelers caught outside. And then favored Holy Wind Elders can bathe in the pool known as Greatfather's Tears, blah, blah, blah. This Greatfather's Tears bit is pretty important. Not for this specific video, but there's another mention in the book that makes it seem a whole lot like a certain well water we've seen in book 5. Alright, so that peak pretty closely describes itself to the Weeping Dragon. So there's a pretty strong association there. That wouldn't mean much if that was the only peak that had a close resemblance. Could be a coincidence, whatever. But then we get to Mount Samara. Now this is why I went all the way into book 4 to pull a description of the Silent King, because Mount Samara rises as the tallest of the 4 holy peaks. It is blanketed in snow, so it's white, and it is crowned in a ring of pale white light that circles the summit. Okay, I'm not going to go into the rest because it's not too important, other than an expert, centuries past, probably dozens of centuries past, bound light aura to the mountain. But it is a pale, or is a white mountain crowned in light. Crowned in light. What else is crowned in light? The Silent King. It is a white tiger crowned in light. Okay, so that's directly the same. And we have the Great Father's Tears, or the Great Father Mountain, describes a lot of similar aspects to the Weeping Dragon. There's got to be something there. I don't really know what it is, because when we go to Mount Venture shows off its distinct mineral composition with rust red cliffs. It is the shortest of the 4 peaks, and most of the mining in Sacred Valley takes place here. It's the home of the Kazan clan and the Golden Sword School. Okay, so this is something that might be useful. It is the home of the Golden Sword School, and the profits of the mine are split between them. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Gold, steel, and half silver are the primary output of these mines, though a further report can be requested on especially rare or trivially mundane materials. Whatever. But we also have knowledge that the Kazan clan wears armor. Even their children wear armor. And there's only one dread god that looks to be made of minerals, or made of, I don't know, stone. That is the Wandering Titan. He has the shell of a tortoise. He has a weapon. He's the only dread god that has a weapon. And he, or it, I can't go into the cults really, but if we were to go into the cults, Abyssal Palace has stone masks over their faces. Anyway, so there could be an association here. Association here. That's pretty interesting. So we know that the Dreadgods are associated with the Labyrinth. I'll get into that in a different video when I talk about the history of the Dreadgods and the potential 5th Dreadgod, or Subject 1. But in this video, we're tying Sacred Valley to the Dreadgods. So we have 4 peaks. We have 4 beasts. We learn that these are Dreadgods. We learn that they came from Sacred Valley because Lee Markuth calls it their home. And one more thing. Elder Whisper decides to drop this little bomb at the end of the book, the very end of the book. It's on page 279. And Elder Whisper is stalking the end, or the fall of the Heaven's Glory School. He's there when Lindon and Urine escape, and he says this fun little bit at the end. He watches the 2 sacred artists leave the valley, and for the first time in centuries, experiences hope. Maybe these children, blessed by the heavens, will save the valley from the Dreadgods' return. Okay, so earlier in the book, we know that Lindon dies from a single Dreadgod. Okay, we learn that he dies in a Dreadgod attack. So now we know that this is not being used as a singular, it's being used as a plural. In the beginning, it looked like it was a singular, but now we know it's a plural. It is a Dreadgod attack of multiple Dreadgods. Lee Markuth foreshadows that the 4 beasts will eventually come home. And then Elder Whisper confirms that he has seen in Fate the eventual return of the Dreadgods, which he's terrified of because it's gonna mess up the valley. But it seems like it messes up the Way Clan's part of the valley, because it only takes out a quarter of the valley, I believe is what Suriel said. Yeah, claims a quarter of the valley decades hence. So, there is a lot to unpack here. What is going on in Sacred Valley? Why is everyone so weak? Does it have to do with the Dreadgods? Why does the Nethergate open every 10 years? How did Tim the Sword Sage die? These are all super spoilery, read and find out. But the thing that I find super interesting is how the mountains and the Dreadgods are similar. Now, I don't know if that's because when the Dreadgods were created, which I'll get into in another video, the Soulsmiths crafted them to be like the mountains that they were from. They got inspiration there, or what? That's got to be it, I would think. I don't know though. We'll have to read and find out. It's fascinating that the Dreadgods were called beasts thousands of years ago when Lee Markuth was still around. And just for reference, and this is spoilery, so if you, I guess it's not, it's in a Word of Will, but it's spoilery because it talks about monarchs. We know that the oldest monarch alive today is the Golden Dragon, Seshthenikaz or whatever. He is 1,200 years old, more or less. In Underlord, we learn that the last time the 4 Dreadgods were all active at the same time, they killed all the monarchs. So we know that the Dreadgods have been waking up one at a time, terrorizing the world, for more than 1,200 years, likely several thousand years. It's interesting to me that Lee Markuth calls them beasts and they were 4 distinct beasts. It wasn't like, oh, all the dread beasts we created way back when, have they come back? No. It's not that at all. It's have the 4 beasts come back. So there were 4 distinct beasts. They weren't gods at the time, they were beasts. I find that interesting. And I find it interesting that he thinks he could beat them. Now there was a recent Word of Will that claimed that Lee Markuth, after ascending, or not really ascending, but leaving Cradle, learned a magic system so that he might have been able to do some damage when he came back, but it didn't end up mattering. But it's fascinating that when he returned, the first thing he said, without being around for a while, is, have the 4 beasts return home. So that's the first thing on his mind. Fascinating. The mountains is a fascinating thing. The Nethergate opening every 10 years is fascinating. Sacred Valley being super weak on purpose is fascinating. I hope you found this video fascinating. I know a lot of you have already heard me talk about this stuff before, but some of you won't have. So I hope it opens up your eyes to the reread value of these books. Because had you read this book for the first time and never returned to it, the information is laid out haphazardly on purpose so that it's harder to draw the lines the first time you read through. You have to go back and reread. And there's gems like this throughout all of the books. So I suggest, if you're a newer reader, go back and reread through all of it, because you'll make these connections and it's a lot of fun. It makes this series a lot of fun to get back into. So thank you for watching. Give me some feedback. I added slides this time. I'll probably keep doing that because I had more slides that I didn't share, so I can do more videos. But let me know, because I want to start providing video content for the community so that people who don't want to go through the Reddit and read all day long can get some of this content. So let me know. Thank you for watching.